Well, welcome everyone. We're delighted to have the gallery open again for a remarkable exhibition of contemporary art from Asia, Third Realm, curated by Davide Quadrio, and to welcome him today virtually for a talk about the exhibition. And before we begin, I'd just like to extend some acknowledgements and some thanks. The Polygon Gallery is located on the unceded territories of the Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Musqueam nations, and we are very thankful to be able to work on these lands. To all our members who are joining us today, I want to say how grateful I am for your support. You are the sustaining force behind our operations, and this year, your generosity is even more meaningful. I think we've all seen extraordinary examples of the importance of our cultural communities during these challenging times, and your commitment is critical to our ability to provide our communities continued access to art. Thank you on behalf of the entire team of the Polygon. Over the past number of months, the gallery has provided a great deal of programming online, but it is wonderful to now have the entire gallery open again with Third Realm. If you have not already, I extend a warm invitation to view the exhibition in person. Third Realm marks the 4th year of a major partnership with TD Bank Group, and I extend my great appreciation for their support as presenting sponsor of Third Realm. This multi-year commitment has a huge impact on the gallery's sustainability. Thank you to TD for being a leader in our community. We are also very appreciative of support from Vancouver's Capture Photography Festival. Third Realm is organized by the Museum of Contemporary Photography at Columbia College, Chicago, and drawn from the FarEastFarWest collection, a collection co-founded by the exhibition curator Davide, and I want to extend my thanks to everyone at the MCP for their collaboration in helping make this show possible. Please do watch for our series of podcasts with Davide, who will be in conversation with a number of curators, critics, and the exhibiting artists over the coming months. Launched yesterday, the first podcast is a conversation with Indonesian curator Farah Wardani and can be found on our website. It's a terrific honor to have Davide here virtually. We wish we could have him here physically. But he's here to speak to us today about the exhibition from his home in Italy. Based in China and in Italy, Davide is an art producer and curator who is active worldwide. In addition to the FarEastFarWest collection, he is the founder of the first not-for-profit independent creative lab in Shanghai, Biz Art Center, a platform to foster the local contemporary art scene. In 2007, he also created Art Hub, a production and curatorial proxy active in Asia and beyond. He's organized hundreds of exhibitions, educational activities, and exchanges. Recent curatorial projects include Visions in the Making at the Italian Cultural Center, New Delhi, and Zhang and Li at the Gallery Borghese, Rome. He is currently working on several projects for the upcoming Gwangju Biennale in South Korea. After the talk is over, we will welcome questions. For those of you who would like to pose one, please use the chat function at the bottom of your screen. Davide will address questions after his talk. And now I pass you along to Davide.
Thank you, Ray. So we are really in a different world, right? And we are in this world of distances. It's an honor to be here. It's very strange for me to be talking to an audience I cannot see in front of myself. So I try to think of you there physically. So thank you again to the Polygon Gallery for the great job that they did. It was a complex installation period. We've been doing everything with Zoom and calls, and which is not ideal. And also, I am of course a curator, but I feel much more as a producer because of the history of what I've been doing in China for so long. So I really usually like to be physically there and to work in a team and do things together, sharing the space in that fantastic moment, which is usually working, toward the building of an exhibition. So I'm really, really thankful because I know how complicated it was, and the team Polygon has been outstanding. I'm also very happy that, as Ray was saying, we are trying to expand the exhibition and also trying to find ways not only to talk about the exhibition, but also to support critical thinking and commissioning to critics and artists, small podcasts or small projects that however, I think that can create a very healthy economy, in this moment of complexity in the contemporary art world. So to start and to talk about this show, I of course the show is it's not huge, but we are talking about 16 artists and 16 projects or more. And I think that tonight I'm gonna try to explain a bit or to just point out some of the undercurrent themes and ideas that actually put the exhibition together. First of all, and I never tired of saying, this show is a show that is not about contemporary Asia per se. It's actually presenting works from the middle of the 2000s to 2016. It seems like, in academic terms, that we are still talking about the contemporaneity, but actually given the speed and the huge changes that Asia has been undertaking for the last 2 decades, 10 years, 15 years past, China, Asia, Indonesia, Thailand were in a very different status. So somehow this exhibition brings to you a sort of frozen moment of Asian development through projects which I've been personally involved as producer, as curator, as a supporter sometimes of complex projects which were somehow connected one to the other because of this very strong performativity element in all the works which are actually also now displayed in the Third Realm show. So this is the first thing that actually brings the show together. It's called Third Realm. Somehow from one of the artists, John Pett is an Indonesian artist. We're going to talk about him later on during the talk. And one of the works which was made by him in the late 2000s was called Third Realm. So the show takes the name from that artwork, and it does so because Third Realm represents this kind of uncertain territory between things, between regions of Asia, between identities, between languages, between mediums as well, and media as well. So identity is the first of the theme I'm gonna introduce tonight. And we start with the first artist, which is actually the oldest presented in the show, FX Harsono, Indonesia, and born in 1949, and we present a very powerful work by him that is called Writing in the Rain. It's a work that is a quintessential of what identity in Asia needs to be, needs to be addressed. So you can see now, is himself is actually a performance. The original work now in the show is presented as a video recording. And FX Harsono, the name is not Chinese, but is not Chinese simply because Suharto in the 60s forced all Chinese minorities in Indonesia to change their name from a Chinese name into an Indonesian Java name. In the conversation that we had with Farah Vardani, that as Red was saying, is a podcast that we have online on Polygon's gallery's website. You can actually listen to the conversation that we had in depth about the fact that Indonesia, of course, is not, it is a unified country, but it's actually a country that is with a huge complexity, since there are not only many minorities, but if you think that Indonesia is basically more than 15,000 islands, and Java is not the biggest one, even if it's, you know, the capital is there. And Javanese, by what Farah Vardani was saying, basically are the conquistadores, you know, of the rest of Indonesia. Java is being, Java itself, the island, speaks more than hundreds of different languages, and there are hundreds of different minorities. So one of those is, of course, Chinese, and FX Harsono addressed this problem of identity through this performance. He writes on a glass his name in Chinese, and progressively while writing with ink, so with ink on the glass, but what happens is that there is this rain falling on top of that. So I would like to share with you a little excerpt of the video. It's 2 minutes videos, but I think just to give you a feeling of how gesture and how the dramatization of this gesture becomes somehow a very poetic way of assessing, you know, his identity as Chinese and how much he lost in the process of modernity. Okay. So this is for me the work that starts the one of the possible reader of the show, and in the show here at the Polygon is juxtaposed to another work by a Singaporean-based artist, Malaysian origin, but also Chinese ethnically, and his name is Heman Chong, and Heman introduced the complexity of, you know, from identity to the social relationship. So how actually Asia is made with a complexity of continuous historical exchanges, which of course are based on political and economical reasons, but also on cultural outcomes. And this exercise of, you know, and this friction between human beings, culturally, politically, economically, is represented by work by Heman Chong, who present 1 million name cards, basically, which are printed on the two sides with full black ink. The name, this is also a bit, you know, 2008, the work. The work is called Monument to the People We've Conveniently Forgotten, I Hate You. And again, in the gallery, it's presented as a beautiful feeling to have if you go to the gallery. It's presented laying on the floor. But the team in Polygon was invited to really perform the act of exchanging cards. And in this sense, the I hate you, which is part of the title, means that the team had to throw physically 1 million cards, against the wall, on the floor, in order to have this sort of releasing, this anxiety related to this forcing connection between people that is so much embedded in the ritual between persons in Asia. So name cards is something that at that time in 2008 and until very recent was something that it was ubiquitous, and it was really about having an identity through that. So the gesture of exchanging the cards is, of course, something that somehow give you a persona more than give you, your character or your personality. And so that is actually something that Heman has been addressing with his work. Of course, that this gesture is so connected to that time, because now Asia somehow is working more on the digital side. So, name cards are being completely or almost completely substituted with WeChat name cards, or with digital exchange of information. So this is we can go on. Michael, you can go to the next slide, please. So all this to say that in the show, what you can see is this continuous stratification of meanings, relationship, ethnicity, political agendas, cultural doubts, and this social stratification is something that, of course, is not only embedded in Asia as an isolated cultural and political part of the world, but of course is also connected to the fact that this certification is connected to the continuous work that is being happening through imperialism and post-imperialism movement. So the artist that I want to present to you now, and it talks really very specifically about this theme, is Jumpet Kusuwidananto. Is also from Indonesia. It was born in 1967. And here we present several works by him, installations and 2 video works and some pictures, which really deal with somehow the nostalgia of a cultural past and the complexity of digesting the colonialist period, but also, how the society in Java at the moment, of course, is the result of a complex history and a complex historical background. One of the video this is, for instance, some of the pictures that we present in the show, and you can see, also other different ethnical groups that somehow are under the same roof of the Javanese and the Indonesian government and political system. But the beautiful work by Jumpet, which I present to you in a little clip, is actually a video where there is this traditional, looks like a traditional dancer, and the dancer is somehow taking part of the garment out and off, and then it reveals, the body, his own naked body, but as you can see, is actually wearing a Japanese mask and different elements which they look like traditional, but actually come from different cultures which were assimilated through different channels. Indonesia was conquered by Japanese imperial forces at one point. It was part of a dictatorship with Suharto, and now is one of the biggest democracy, together with India, of course. And so we can actually show just a bit of this video, which I think it's very, very powerful in its simplicity.
Temahan rahayu kabeh. Apan sariro ayu, ingidran kang widodari. Rineksa malaikat, lan sagung prarasul, pinayungan ing yang suksmo.
The work is called Body of God. It was made in 2011. So you can see that another of the theme, of course, is the rituality related to religion, which is a syncretic religion, is of course, not a purified religion. It's still another stratification. And it connects, the Southeast Asia with South Asia and with India. And of course, other parts of Asia up to the north of Thailand and China.
Pangucap.
Okay. So what to follow this, of course, this call for roots and cultural roots in various parts of Asia, and you can see that in many of the works in the show. Somehow they also reflect on this idea of globalization, and of course the anxiety that comes with it. Globalization in Asia, I mean, I've been in China most of the time, about 3 years I've been doing research in Thailand and in Southeast Asia. Globalization in the very sort of, hyper strong globalized force, it's been really exponentially happened in the middle of 2000 on. And especially the opening up of China and becoming one of the strongest countries politically, economically in the region created a strange combination of post-socialist or socialist society with then confrontation with, especially with two of the countries which are in Asia very close to the Western powers of United States, which are Korea and Japan. And in the show, we present what I think is one of the most powerful collective who's been working between Japan, Korea, and China for many years until, unfortunately, Chen Xiaoxiong, the Chinese artist, died. And the work that they've been doing, which is extremely performative again, and very ironic and very critical, it's been, I think, one of the most powerful works that have been made in the late 2000s. So the three artists are Chen Xiaoxiong, Ji-Hong Seok, and Ozawa Tsuyoshi from Japan. And in the show, we present documentation of one of the chapter of Xi Jinping what is Sijimen? Sijimen is first of all, is a Chinese word, but it doesn't really mean anything. Sijin means Xi means west, Jing means territory, and Men means basically door. And this is the Sijimen means basically the capital of the West. And it somehow represents a country which doesn't exist, but actually it exists in the minds of the three artists. Is also a country that has its own rules and its own way of perceiving things. And one of the strongest work that they made is actually about the Olympic Games. In Beijing in 2008. And here I can show you like a couple of minutes actually of Hun-Suk talking about some of the ideas, but also some of the anxieties that they had, the three of them. So they gathered in Beijing, whilst in the center there was all this frenzy of the Olympic Games going on. They actually were they were in the outskirts of the city. This is actually the area where the Pili and Boris Gallery is, and they created their own Olympic Games in a very sort of lighthearted and very funny way of doing it. But let's listen and see what they've been doing with this short film.
Could it also be in the West? Xijing. You know that the West cultures or West cultures really have a very huge environment to the Asian countries. For example, we also have lots of the influence from the Western cultures. For example, America, United States, or the Europe. But the Xijing can be a Xijing probably also, you know, the kind of a suggestion between East and West. If we want to really real dialogue with the Western cultures and the Western history.
So they perform all the different specialties basically of the Olympic Games, but instead of working on competition, they were working on basically on collaboration. For instance, you know, winning was winning together and not against each other. So there were all these kind of different levels of very ironic way of thinking about what sport is and about what countries should do. So for instance, they choose, you know, different things, like they smoke a cigarette and then they throw, you know, the butt of the cigarette in the, or you will see they're gonna eat like an apple and then, you know, throw the apple as in a basketball game, you know, and they were all working together.
You know, now is we are artists and we have lots of the exhibitions in the Western areas. For example, we were invited from, for example, Germany or Italy and many countries. But that means there is already lots of civilized, and then they organize very well, and then they also have an open mind to the Asian cultures, and then they invited us. And then, but now in Asia, because of the probably the economic problems or many problems, and we relatively invited the Western the artists to Asia very few times, and then so we want to, you know, to connect so kind of a relationship between the Western art and then Asian art.
When listening to Hun-Suk talking about this relationship between art in Asia and the West, and we are talking about 2008 here, the scene in Asia was extremely different than it is now. And it was true that at that time, there was much more happening on somehow invitations, and curiosity about Asian artists and especially Chinese artists to go abroad. But they were very limited, still limited presence of important international artists in China in the specific. Now the situation is completely changed. And if I think about what happened in the last 12 years, how many museums opened and how many incredible projects and artists have been really coming to Asia and do shows there. It's really mind-blowing. But this is again gives you an idea of the show that actually this show Third Realm that talks about a specific moment. So I really invite you to go in to see the show having this kind of idea and spectacle that is not about now, but it's about something that happens just before and somehow now with the knowing what happened later on, to see this, you really feel the beginning of something that is very hard to find in archives or in still in writing, for instance. So what is beautiful about the work of C.G. Mann is, of course, the strength of collaborative intelligence. And a lot of the works in the show are actually not by artists in sense as a person, but actually are collective of artists. There are like 3 or 4 works in the show which are by collectives. That is something that I've been always very attracted to in this idea of collaborative intelligence, which of course opens very intriguing ways of approaching production in the art. Not only C.G. Mann that you just saw, but there are a couple of artists, Birdhead, Weiyu, who I've been following from the very early career on. Sun Tao was working when he was only 21 in Bizarre, in the art center I founded in Shanghai in 1998. And their territory is Shanghai. And from a sort of globalized Asia, we go into a deep, very sort of provincial looking, it appears like that, but it's not, way of analyzing the world. So Birdhead, they spent days and days and days only taking pictures with very expensive cameras or very cheap ones, and they just take pictures of the city, and they've been basically working with these fragments in creating artworks which are always made by the 2 of them together without distinctions and without an ego, for instance. Is beautiful to see them working on the artworks they are working on, because they really are. It's basically the artwork is the territory of creation for both of them, without any limits and without any desire of ownership. And I think it's actually very nice to hear what they say in this little clip that we're gonna put on for you.
什么是艺术这件事情非常简单而狭窄。如果你做作品跟政治有关，对我们来说那不是艺术；如果你做作品跟女权有关，对我来说那也不是艺术；如果你做作品跟环保有关，那他妈的也不是艺术。就这么翻译，把他妈的也翻译出来。 么是摇头认同的艺术？很简单，8个字：正义在哪里？爱和艺术要去干嘛？艺术必须表达这些东西，这是人类的基本情绪的宣泄和认识生命这件事情。
如果说单张照片的话，对于我们来说，没有就作品上面，就是我们做作品的时候，没有单张照片没有好和坏的区别，只有它在整个作品里面有没有起到正确的作用的一个区别。我们叫自己叫运动摄影 ，sports photography、action photography 。
这个就是我们鸟头的工作室，然后现在这个房间是，就从这里门口到那里都是做木工的，这里是那个暗房，Birdhead，然后这里就是把胶卷洗出来，然后
Yeah, we use this machine. 因为这个是洗胶卷
啊，洗胶卷，然后放大，然后这边是药水，然后这个是做到一半的一张照片，对，就是我们每一次拍的这个都是那个时间的那个时间空间的一个切片嘛。拍照这件事情呢也不那么重要，可以变成写字、画画、写诗。就是我们基本上不是凭空想出来的这些东西。他前面的意思就是我们是不是有一个自己构架的一个世界，是这个意思。就是我们的作品基本上不是凭空想出来的，就是还是和就是自身啊，还有平时的一些生活啊都有关系。所以说它不是一个 dream world。我看到他第一次是进校的时候，那个是
We can stop here, Michael. I think because then they go into. Thank you. So, what is interesting here, and is another of the very important thing that I want to say about the show, is that most of the time, and in a lot of exhibitions I see about Asia and China, there is a tendency in Western countries to politicize or to simplify the language of contemporary art in Asia into dangerous territories of exoticism or simplifications. And what I think that I tried to convey in the show, and with the help also with fantastic people working with me as well, is also to create I can say text for each of the works, which are very direct, and they don't give overwhelming information, but they give you trajectories to understand what you're looking at, but without falling into the trap of oversimplifying it or over criticizing it or or try to compare what you see to what you know. What I think I invite you to do when you go and see this show is not to I can say to have preconcept or to try to understand what you see only through what you think you understand that you see in front of you, but actually try to be somehow can say embarrassed by what you see in front of you, and try to really try to understand the complexity of what you're looking at. On the other side, the show is, and that is also done on purpose, is extremely well balanced in terms of the presence, and the appearance of the works, which are per se very beautiful. And this is also something that I I usually put with, I put a lot of importance to that as artworks which are abstract in a way, and they try to create generalize or can say abstract things, but what you see in front of you, they can also sometimes look so ethnical that the contrast between the two can be a bit strange at first. But this is, the cultural references is something that I always try to put out there. Being a person who's been living more than half of my life in a country that is not mine, and I've been dedicating my life into learning Chinese and Chinese history and really digging into that as much as I could. I always think that is very important to try, and especially that is something that I say all the time when I'm in Western countries. Is now the time really to fill gaps of understanding and cultural knowledge, and I don't think that is possible to be not to be interested in what's happening in that part of the world, and I try really to bring this feeling into whatever I try to do here in Western countries. And I finish the presentation with the work by one of the actually youngest artists presented there. So we started with FX Harsono, and we had with a very seminal work on identity, and we finish with a contradictory work that actually is religion and science combined. This is a work by Lu Yang, based in Shanghai. The title of the work is Wrathful King Kong Core, and we co-produced it with her in 2011. And it was a moment where Lu Yang was really attracted to religiosity and symbolism, but also, of course, science and the way that the brain works. And in this 3D animation that was done entirely by her, without any help, is a work that lasts around 14 minutes, 15 minutes, and she worked on it at that time for almost a year and a half by herself, to do everything from renderings to editing to painting and to of course the sound and the recording. It's been one of the most incredible work that she did at that time. And just to conclude, this is of course a Buddhist figure, and is a Makala, which is a representation of a deity that is actually in anger. And so each of the symbols of the deity, which is a Tibetan representation of a Buddhist deity, basically is connected to symbols which are connected then to the brain in a scientific way. And so as the Buddhist figures are systematically analyzed alongside the brain, the artist is perhaps suggesting that through state-of-the-art biotechnology, even deities can transcend the metaphysical realm and enter maybe what is the third one, or the digital one. And so we can have a couple of minutes just to see the moment where the Makala is actually completely analyzed scientifically, all the symbols, all the gestures, and then there is the dance, which is the anger dance, and this dance is what the artwork ends with, and we can enjoy it together. So we started the conversation with identity. We touched upon stratification and cultural stratification, collaborative intelligence, what it means to work in a speed change, in a fast and furious changing environment. And then we end with like what cultural references are and the importance of that. And so I really hope that you will visit the show and will find your own trajectory. I did touch upon some artists who are not from Asia. In particular, Paola Pivi did a project, a monumental project, and she's included in the show because of that work. And so again, Asia in the global Asia is not anymore only about ethnicity, but it's also about interest and about working there and about digging stories and narratives, which hopefully can bring this amazing and so variegated and so complex cultures to the attention of the world. Thank you very much. So I think I can actually then answer some of the questions if you want.
Thank you very much, Davide. That was wonderful. We have a couple questions here in the chat. I'll start with this one here from Joanne. Congratulations on an exquisite exhibition, and thank you for the very thoughtful discussion today. Could you speak to your rich professional experience working in the region during this period, as well as your aspirations and trajectory for the future, please?
I think I've been blessed in working in the late 90s. Well, actually, first I was studying there because I'm an historian and I've been studying Tibetan architecture and I've been living in Tibetan area for over 3 years. That it was my major. And then I moved to Shanghai in the late 90s, and then it was it's very difficult to explain what it meant to be at that time in that place because everything was happening. There was not art market, there were not yet a lot of museums, there were only a couple of galleries. And it was really a collective desire of doing things. So I entered, the experience in China and Asia, I entered it through making things together with other people. And the collective of artists I've been working with, like Su Zhen, Yang Fudong, Yang Zhenzhong, some of them are also in the show. They made my professionalism as well. We've been working from scratch. I always say that I'm from Italy, but I've never been trained as a curator or a producer. So China trained me to and created who I am now. We published actually a book. It's actually a trilogy of books a couple of years ago, in occasion of a retrospective of the post-Tiananmen China from the late 80s to 2010. And in that occasion, we were invited to present the archives of what we've been doing for almost 2 decades. And the book is available. It's been published by Moose publisher in Milan. It's in English only, and can be very easily found online. So if you type like art tab on Bizarre, Davide Quadrio and Moose, you can find it. What is the inspirational trajectory for the future? I'm really very intensively thinking, and this moment of COVID brought me to first of all to have time to think, and I'm very grateful of that. I think our world is being somehow put in a stop, and this stop is not only negative, I think it's actually extremely fruitful, especially in the cultural world. It's a moment where we should think, what is meaningful to carry on, and what the responsibility that we have. And I had a moment of discomfort as well, because just before the pandemic crisis, from September last year to January, I've been traveling so much that I just realized that I've been basically traveling twice around the world in less than 6 months. And I at one point I said, well, there were beautiful projects, and of course, every time that I travel is a travel, because there are projects that actually feel completely my soul. But at the same time, what stays with that, and how much you can really not only enjoy, but how much you can go into a deeper sort of experience, while you're working. And I think that what we should really try to do now is really to try to work more in depth and take a bit of a distance, and really try to not to produce too much, but try to, and I say that to myself more than anybody else, but really try to really concentrate on what is important, and what can actually change things. So what I feel the trajectory of the future is really thinking of how to create platforms of mutual understanding, and the third realm is somehow a bit ahead of times, in the sense that the exhibition is my life, is what I've been doing. You're gonna see basically what I've been working on. Each single work has been part of the production of months or sometimes years of the work of the people and artists and friends involved with. And so I think what I think would be very important now for me is to try to find ways to enhance and push the productions. And I feel that there is a lot of work that needs to be done with corporations, and not only with institutions. I've been exploring collaboration with corporations and companies for the last 5 years, and I want to push that even further. It's a complicated work to do, But I also think that it's, you know, the institutions, artists, producer curators, and the economy that is related to so much objectifications in productions by, you know, companies needs to somehow come together and find ways, you know, to create experiences for people we are meaningful. And I'm really working toward that direction, and I'm really trying to understand how to combine and link corporations, my work, the work of artists, and try to find ways which are actually also ethical in order to really enhance creativity even more.
Okay, and then the second question, and last one, unless another one comes in, this comes from Lam. Thanks for the insight, Davide. Could you share your views on how censorship in China affects artists' creative freedom, specifically with political works under the current government policy?
Yeah, this is a question that accompanies me since the beginning of working in China. And censorship, it's a word that it's when it's connected to China, gets a very specific meaning, you know, and it's not about censorship but about oppression. If you think about, you know, other countries, you know, and I'm including, for instance, Italy as well, you know, I mean, there are things that you don't feel you're censored with, but you know that you're going to be censored. If you do anything against the Catholic Church, or if you do anything that is controversial in sexual terms that can be offensive of the patriarchal family, in Italy, still something that you need to consider. But even, and there are different ways of being inclusive, and maybe this is going to be controversial, especially in Canada, right? That I always find the political correctness that Anglo-Saxon words imply in, I can say, insane, you know, like, oh, you know, we embrace diversity, and, you know, we want to be, you know, like having words that somehow implicates the fact that that we are not racist, basically, or we are inclusive of any kind of diversity. You know, it's a beautiful way of saying, but it doesn't mean that actually the society respect that profoundly, or came into dealing with that those issues in a not problematic way. So censorship in China has been something that we've been fighting through the work that we've been doing within China from the beginning, in the sense that we had with the group of people in Shanghai, and we've been extremely criticized by figures like Ai Weiwei, for instance, because we were never aggressive or I can say confrontational, but we had a lot of problems as well. We had, you know, exhibition closed down, we had artists arrested, but we didn't use that through the media, for instance. This is something that it was very consciously done, especially because being me, not Chinese, and working in China, I always felt a huge responsibility in doing things that could be could create harm to people I've been working with, especially in my 20s, you know, and we were all very young. The responsibility of working with people that could actually be arrested, that it was something that really sometimes didn't make me sleep very well at night, right? So, but said that, I don't think the problem is censorship per se in China. I think the China at the moment is a systemic control and in society that that is becoming extremely difficult to understand where it's gonna go to. I left Shanghai in the sense that I moved back to Milan as a primary residency 2.5 years ago, and it was the right moment for me to get out because I felt that there was a turn of events that it was making me feel too very uneasy with the situation. Even though superficially everything seems absolutely great in Shanghai, but the control and the persistent presence, you know, of regulations and rules are becoming really very, can say, they really take the oxygen out of you. On the same time, as always, you know, we had waves of that in the last 30 years I was in China, but never so strong and never so critical. The situation, and I think that Lam, you probably are from Hong Kong, right? So of course, the situation in Hong Kong is something that is extremely distressing and disquieting for everybody. We were somehow we were expecting it because of the the freedom movement in the last year and a half and something, and some of what happened in Hong Kong. I think for me also was a ringing the bell really of a crackdown that could have become very strong. Was I think last year when like symbol of the Commonwealth, where flags of the Commonwealth were actually brought out in Hong Kong. And if you know, and of course the history of Hong Kong and the Opium War, you can actually understand how shameful the history of that land has been for the Chinese people more than the Chinese government. So all that, there were signs of possible backlashes and very strong ones. So I don't know. I feel that if you think on the other hand that even one of the biggest production houses or film production houses, which is legendary, and the headquarters was in Beijing, and legendary is actually now moving out of China, so the headquarters is not there anymore. So there are all signs that something profoundly I wouldn't say wrong to say wrong, but it's profoundly different is happening in China at the moment. And really for many years I thought I could understand what was going on a bit, but now I'm only very afraid of the consequences of this kind of direction. But there are, of course, also incredible social movements which very hardly seen outside China because the media don't report it. But there are, like, for instance, artists like Zhang Peili that is doing this incredible project with T-shirts, writing the character Minbai Bu Minbai, which means you understand or you don't understand, which were the two, basically it was the sentence that the police said to the young doctor in Wuhan who then died by COVID when the police asked them not to say anything about the pandemic and the COVID virus being so dreadful. And this movement actually, you have, this artworks by Zhang Pili repeats the sentence. Do you understand that if you keep on doing something, we're gonna take care of you, basically. And there was this movement in China, especially by young people, where Minbai and Bu Minbai, was used really on the political sort of dissents, and it was extremely powerful to see, and it's still on now, and you can see it on WeChat and everywhere. And of course, Minbai, Bu Minbai, so understand or don't understand, are very common language, right? So even if censorship is on, how can how can a computer understand that these two words were actually they're actually used in political sense? So that allowed a lot of dissents to be sharing that, wherever on the net, and it's been extremely powerful to see. I just read a very short article about this few months back. I think it was in New York Times, but it was not extremely well explained, how powerful this kind of underground movements are, which are indeed, again, the censorship, or they're able, to play with the censorship in a creative way.
We had one last question that popped up here in the chat from Jonathan, and it is, yes. Do you think COVID-19?
Hi, Jonathan.
Yeah. Do you think COVID-19 and limits on international travel will precipitate a shift from global art market driven biennales and art fairs towards smaller local art galleries and projects?
Yeah, it's already happening, and again, I think it's not only already happening, it's the new reality, right? So, and the challenge, and I think that the artwork actually, and somehow, even if it's complicated, for many people, and we know the galleries and biennales and all that, and I'm working on a biennale at the moment that should have opened now. We moved it to February next year. Now we are considering how to create an experience of a biennale which is not only offline but also online. But we don't want to do that in a sort of literal and sort of didactic way. So again, things are changing extremely fast. I see a lot of potential of things that were still somehow not completely digested. I love the fact that we can, and we're gonna push and enhance the possibility of online practices. I don't think that so far there are great results. Like if you see what the art fairs have been doing or they're doing online, is a very boring sort of way of distributing information. What the other thing which I think is beautiful is actually going back to the locality. I'm actually writing a long text on that. I'm gonna publish it next month on Domus Online, so you can probably gonna find it, which is exactly on this theme. And I think locality and small experiences. So the idea of creating, artworks for smaller community, and then using in a clever way, in an inventive way, digital platform to diffuse that in a proper way. I think that is going to be the very interesting and challenging way of linking also artistic productions, presentation of artistic productions, and then how you can, move the production out of the experience, the physical experience. The other thing that I find very intriguing is I think that because of this reason, and because of the fact that you're going to be less and less connected to physicality somehow, also will encourage the idea of artworks not as objects but as concept, as to really have this kind of spiritual understanding of what an artwork is. And I think that would be very beneficial to many different forms of art that they've been so far still somehow on the back of the main, for instance, objects of art, which are still paintings, sculptures, installations, and stuff like that. So this is what I think, you know, but it's a fascinating period. I'm very, very positive about, you know, what's happening. And I think it's going to be very, very powerful, the outcome of this.
Okay, well, unless there are no other questions, Davide, thank you very much for being so generous with your time. This was really great. And thank you to all the members who attended this talk.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so, for me, it's so sad that I cannot see your faces, you know, and it's very, but thank you for the fantastic questions. And I hope that I've been able to entertain you a bit as well. You know, it's a bit strange to talk to myself and Michael, who I see in front of me, but, you know, but again, it's been a great experience, and I'm very looking forward, you know, to do things in this strange world. You know, we don't have to be afraid. This is what we are now. So bring it on. We are creative people. You know, new experiences.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Third Realm is on now at the Polygon Gallery until November 8th. Have a great day.